Thank you. Yes, if the speakers could come up. It was great to hear from Laura. It was great to also meet her in person. It's great to have everybody here representing all these different associations. Everybody who's here is going to be speaking to you from different vantage points, and that's what we love to hear in these kinds of discussions, because it's quite a complex topic when you go down to the details. And me personally, this is quite a momentous occasion, because we have been talking within the industry for a long time about interoperability. And these kinds of discussions can only really take place in person when you roll up the sleeves. And just a few moments ago, behind closed doors, we've been having these discussions about how do we make things a little bit easier for the industry. And that's really encouraging. So I would like to kick us off just with a quick round of intros, and then we'll go into a bit more detail on what's the state of play today and how do we move forward to make things a little bit easier for our VASPs in terms of travel rule compliance. Ilya, you want to kick us off with an intro?
Sure. My name is Ilya Brovin. I'm Chief Growth Officer at Sumsub. Sumsub, we're probably the largest KYC provider out there, certainly in the crypto space, besides KYC and IDV, KYB, and everything that has to do with onboarding. We also provide a number of kind of ongoing monitoring solutions around anti-fraud and transaction monitoring. And one of those solutions is actually a travel rule, which from the very beginning we've built as an aggregator, based on an aggregator model. So we, besides our own client base, also integrate several other protocols. And we are certainly huge proponents of interoperability on a protocol levels to make life easier for everybody.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you again. My name is Laura Hildebrand, and I am a compliance officer at Coinbase, where I've worked for the past 7 years, including on the topic of travel rule and helping to build out trust, which we just talked about for, I think, 90% of you that were here. So.
Thank you. My name is Ilya Volkov. I'm a board member of Crypto Valley Association, and I'm CEO and co-founder of YouHodler. So we are a crypto asset service provider, virtual asset service provider, financial intermediary. So we have multiple registration licenses, and that's why we have to use travel rule. We have to be compliant with all travel rule requirements in Switzerland, in the European Union, and in other countries. So, and just on another note, it's quite a rare case to have two Ilyas on the panel. So
Laura
quite
can make a
often
wish.
different conferences, quite a rare case. And also it's nice because Chris and Laura, you look like sisters. Why especially? Because Chris has been working on travel rule on one side of the ocean, and you've been working on travel rule on the other side of the ocean.
Mirror images, yeah.
So it's so nice. So we have great composition of the panel. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Filip Gospodinov. I'm co-founder and CEO at 21 Analytics. We are a vendor for RegTech specialized in travel rule. That's why I'm here. My background is I work in crypto industry since 2014. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you. Well, Filip, let's start with you maybe,
Yes.
in reverse order. I know that you are very often in contact with smaller startups and also larger ones that are coming to you for the first time, asking about travel rule, and some of them are quite advanced in their knowledge, and some of them know exactly what they want, and others maybe not so much. So what can you tell us a little bit about the process of working with first-time VASPs, and what makes for a good solution that's scalable?
Yes, so what VASPs often underestimate is how disruptive the introduction of travel rule is. It will change the user experience, but also it will completely disrupt your business, because you cannot just blindly send transactions back and forth. You really need to know where it goes, you need to understand, you need to archive it, and so on. And what usually VASPs also underestimate is that the landscape of solutions is currently very fragmented. So no matter what you choose, you will never reach all of your counterparties. And then you need to start to improvise. And there is like a tiny trick to make a small workaround, and that's if you start to accept self-hosted wallets only. It sounds a bit paradox, because you disrupt your original workflow completely, but because everyone can withdraw to their own wallet, and you can always reach that through the proofs and so on, you end up having 100% of transactions going through. And the next step, I would recommend to do the VASP to VASP travel rule solutions.
Yeah, we know historically that was, especially at the beginning of the introduction of the travel rule, that was a bit of a workaround that some exchanges were using, advising their clients to withdraw to private wallets. In the meantime, that's become quite complicated with all the due diligence for private wallets. But yes, that's interesting insights from somebody who's there.
I think that's also how Bitstamp now got their MiCA license. They only allow self-hosted wallets.
Okay. Laura, we've just heard from you about trust. What do you find are some of the key elements that make for a good travel rule solution, which you've obviously baked into your solution, but what comes up again and again, perhaps from the point of view of the regulator? What are they looking for, and what are clients looking for in terms of key features?
Yeah, so I think from a Coinbase perspective, we share somewhat of a unique perspective here because we're both a VASP with our own travel rule obligations around the world in a variety of different jurisdictions, as well as operating the trust solution and engaging with really hundreds of VASPs every year to help them with their travel rule journeys. I think that the few points that always come up are around coverage. So a VASP is hoping that when they can plug in a technical solution, that they are able to reach as many of their top counterparties as possible. And to Filip's point, there's no silver bullet in travel rule. There's no one solution that you can implement that's going to give you 100% coverage, simply because there are still jurisdictions all around the world that don't have travel rule requirements, and so there are VASPs that are not participants in any solution. So a VASP can even go and plug in 10 different solutions, and it's still not going to solve your problem in 100% of cases. So coverage is really important. They want to know that they're getting the most bang for their buck, that if they're going to spend time and effort doing a technical integration, that it's going to really pay off and not disrupt the transaction flows. The second piece we hear kind of both internally as well as from other VASPs is they really want to ensure that the solution they're using is secure. So obviously there's a trade-off with you have to send your customer data all around the world, and so they really want to make sure that whatever solution they're using, both the transmission of the data is done in a secure way and that the VASP on the other side has gone through some level of vetting so that they don't have to, on a bilateral basis, go out to thousands of their counterparties and have to recreate that diligence. I think from a regulator's perspective, I think there's varying degrees out there. I know from a trust standpoint, we've always really reiterated that data security is so important in this space. There's some regulators that I think care a lot about just coverage and making sure that 100% of VASP's flows are covered. I think other regulators have been a little bit more flexible in understanding the data privacy and security challenges and the sunrise issues. But I think at the end of the day, we're all on the same page. We all want to fight financial crime, and we don't want our exchanges to be exploited by bad actors. And so we're really looking at how can we solve this in a way that acknowledges the reality that we're in and the progress that we've made.
Thank you. Yeah, Ilya, how about you? I know that you have had some implementation experience, or actually I would say quite a bit. What makes for a good travel solution from your point of view, and especially from a user experience point of view? What are you looking for, and what have you considered in the past?
So first of all, as you know, in Switzerland, it's a must-have since like 2021, 4 years already. So, and since then we have our travel rule solution. Maybe speaking about early days, it was absolutely not convenient. So user experience was like a disaster. So luckily we have now multiple options, but at the same time we have multiple challenges. So because we service quite a lot of customers from different jurisdictions, like Switzerland, European Union, let's say Argentina, for example, with quite different requirements from regulators. But we, being a Swiss or European Union company, we have to follow the rules, right? So, and the challenge is that there are different protocols, like trust, right? Or we have some aggregators like Sumsub. So we've been working with Sumsub because they're helping us to aggregate different protocols. So, and we need to orchestrate our direct integrations with providers like trust, and we have to work with the aggregators and support them to get more protocols onboarded to the aggregation. So, but the interesting thing is that, and as you know, even in this audience, we've been speaking about travel rule during the last 5 years, even not 4 years. But for the first 4 years, it was mostly legal and compliance discussions. All those chairs were covered with the legal guys speaking about just legal aspects of travel rule. For some of us, it was fun. For some of us, it was just something boring. But the truth is that the real challenges started this year because VASPs, CASPs, banks, even banks, faced a lot of issues. Speaking about us, our customers faced some issues with Revolut. So topping up their accounts at YouHodler, they got some issues with stuck transactions because Trust is using one protocol, Revolut is using one protocol, we're using another protocol, right? So, and this is a real challenge because it's a negative experience for the end users. It's some loss of revenues for us as a service provider. And this is a big push. If it was before just a legal discussion, now it's real money. And so we are working with it by investing more and more funds in more integrations of different protocols. And I think, so we're quite advanced, and I think we will polish it at the best possible way. But again, now it's a challenge, and companies who will not solve this challenge most likely will need to stop operations simply. So, and this is again not about regulatory requirements already, it's about real money nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, some people may think it's as simple as on our mobile phones when we have different applications for communicating with different parties, but the implementation itself is extremely costly. And like you said, from a user experience, it's a challenge. Ilya, let me turn to you. I know that you've made considerable efforts in terms of interoperability, trying, like your counterparty, Ilya, to find different solutions to make it easier for your clients. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've tackled this challenge.
It has taken certainly a lot of work and a lot of talking, and
you don't have that many gray hairs yet, so
not yet. Yeah, but indeed, we're a global business, so we operate everywhere. So in APAC, there are protocols that exist there. There are European parties. There's trust in the US. So of course, we've had these conversations day one, but everybody's trying kind of to develop their protocol and solution in a certain way, and maybe interoperability is not their priority from day one. We've always known that we're not going to build just another protocol and compete with the others. We'd rather aggregate. So the challenges that we had are reaching that type of an agreement, and everybody has again their own view on some aspects of it. Technically, because everybody has built their protocol in a vacuum, like how they think it should be done, every integration is super custom. That's the second challenge. And then once you do these two, I think, and then you have the challenges that are a little bit more predictable, but they still have to be solved, right? If you're operating across the globe, then your counterparty is in another jurisdiction, and so slightly different rules need to apply. So what we've tried to do is effectively kind of take all of that load from our customers and solve it for them.
Oh, sounds amazing. Please tell us how you solve.
Well, I mean, there's the product layer, which applies the rules, the logic, and the different bundles to different jurisdictions so you can take into account. So effectively, in my ideal world, our customer says, oh, I need the bundle for UAE VARA enabled, or I need a bundle for MAS in Singapore enabled. And then it just works out of the box, at least 90% of it. And then the next layer, once you do all of that, is that, well, and then can we deliver the message that we can orchestrate the different protocols to send and receive messages from all of those? And I think we've made a good progress along that journey, and hoping to make even more progress now that, as was mentioned, now that the regulators are actually focusing on this working, we have some extra support from both customers and the regulators that this needs to be solved ultimately.
Great. So building an orchestration layer, bringing all the protocols together, helping our clients to talk to each other through various channels.
And there's another thing is each protocol or solution, they also have their own ideas of how interoperability should be solved by releasing their own versions of, Laura mentioned Trust Hub, right? But then Nota Bene said there's a TAP protocol, and so on and so forth. So you kind of they all come up with different proposals, and then effectively we need to kind of integrate the different ones. So, but I think now that everybody understands this is a big hurdle and challenge, the minds are being put together now to kind of solve it.
Okay, so Filip, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the people who have to make this decision about these various tools and models available, or coming to a service provider that is helping them to bridge the gap between the different solutions. What should a VASP be thinking of in terms of the criteria that they're looking at? And I'm thinking in particular about centralization versus decentralization models, or other types of criteria that stand out to you as being very relevant in the decision of how to select the best solution.
Yeah, I think we have a variety of solutions with different properties. Centralized solutions have the issue that you need to go through a vetting and application process. You have a third-party dependency where you need to wait for them to act. We had some customers coming to us because they just lost patience. The process was too long. So this is one common problem that we can see. Also with central solutions, especially nowadays with all these tariffs and retaliatory measures, we have seen, for example, that the EU was considering to maybe tax US companies that are providing tech services or cloud services here. I know that Microsoft Cloud pulled out of a university in China. So all these dependencies that you have with a centralized solution nowadays also impose a risk that you need to take account of. And also the centralized solutions kind of have also attached a bit of an issue with interoperability, because also there you're kind of have a third-party risk that they will implement the things they have scheduled in time, right? And if we contrast this with open protocols, then you are in your own boss. You can, in your own pace, implement these solutions, or you can come to a vendor that implements it for you. And there you don't have all these issues with going through application process, because it's permissionless. Everyone can implement it. Even centralized solutions can implement an open protocol. And I always like to contrast these things with an example from the real world. So email is an open protocol. And if I have an Outlook.com account at Microsoft, I can send you an email to your gmail.com account, which is Google, and it just works. And then on the other hand, we have centralized solutions like Telegram, WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook chat, and so on. And we see that until today, they don't interoperate, but actually they're getting more and more of these things on my phone. And I think no one enjoys that, right? You want to reconcile all these things. And so I believe the future will be an open protocol that will established.
I can only agree. So being like a customer of all those protocols, it's such a pain to work with number of protocols. It's huge budget, different standards. So we need an email standard open protocol for travel rule. So, yeah.
There's an open protocol called TRP that is even better than email because it's fully encrypted and secure.
My view, if I can add to that, is that I think ultimately it will kind of come to that.
Yes.
Either by there being one protocol, or maybe them being sort of fully interoperable. And then you don't even care, sort of, is there one protocol of 5? As long as you can plug into that global network from any point of view, like you said, with any type of, like Filip said, with any type of client, you know, so like our client effectively would deliver a whole bunch of functionality, maybe like a lot of stuff that Outlook would have, right? But then somebody else will say, well, I'll build my own email server and do it all ourselves, and somebody will use another one. So that's ultimately, and then we will be competing not on the basis of, you know, what's your coverage? It's going to be global. It's just like which functions, which support, what service, what price do you want to pay? Because Gmail is free, right? But corporate Gmail is not free. Or if you use Outlook and even more functionality, you pay something for that. And that will be a free choice then for everybody.
What do you think about that, Laura?
So I think there's definitely merit to open decentralized protocols, and I think when we set out to build trust, we tried to look at how can we create kind of a hybrid model. Because I think the challenge we saw at the time when we started building trust was that although the decentralized protocols from a data sharing standpoint, that was the approach we wanted to take, I think there were certain elements of travel rule compliance, particularly around counterparty identification and then data security and having some standards around who you're sharing data with and what type of vetting they've been subject to, that we really wanted to build more functionality around. I think at the time, because we were in the early days of travel rule, we didn't see a lot of VASPs out there in the ecosystem using these decentralized open protocols. I think at the time, if everyone was on TRP and we could easily plug in TRP, that would be like magic solution to our problems. Again, I think from our standpoint, trying to convince our own security team internally that we were just going to start sending out travel rule data to counterparties around the world without having things like actual proof that the counterparty on the other side owns that wallet address or that they've gone through some sort of onboarding review was really a hard no. And so we really thought about, okay, from a VASP perspective, like what do we need to get comfortable to be able to actually share that data? And how do we do it in an efficient way where every VASP isn't having to go out there and do that themselves? Because then we end up where the banks are, where everyone has their own standard of due diligence from a compliance standpoint, from a data security standpoint, and it becomes very inefficient when I'm sending out thousands of DDQs to all of my counterparties, and so is Ilya, and so is every other exchange. And so we thought, how can we leverage kind of independent third-party relationships to help do this on behalf of the entire industry and build some real infrastructure around travel rule?
I think you guys were in a very unique position to be able to do that. You definitely had the volume, and you had the funds, and you had, well, not necessarily the regulatory pressure, but you definitely had the will to do it. I think that was present in maybe other industries, but maybe the funds were missing or other elements. So it was probably a good coincidence that everything came together for you guys to push that forward. And I'm really happy to see from a Swiss perspective or from an EU perspective, more and more opportunities now to interoperate with trust and have those discussions about interoperability. So maybe just to close it off and leave a little bit of time for any questions that anybody might have. What is, in your view, I mean, we've talked a lot about what the challenges are, what clients are looking for, what makes for a good solution. What's, in your view, necessary to be able to get to this level where we have a standard that everybody can adhere to and interoperability can become a reality? Where should we go from here? Ilya?
So actually, we spent more than an hour in the meeting room upstairs today speaking exactly about this from practical perspective. So we were speaking about how to integrate different protocols, and it seems like we have a solution. So we just need to spend a bit more time, right? So, and we'll have it. So
you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in next year. We'll be presenting our brand new solution.
We'll see.
If only it were that easy.
Yeah, it's not
Funded
easy,
by
but
Coinbase. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's an evolution, right? So we're just pushing this evolution. We're contributing to this evolution, and we will be there for sure because it's must-have, right? The only problem, sorry, I will be again speaking about challenges. The only problem is costs because. Being financial institutions, so you have to invest a lot in a different kind of compliance tools, right? KYC, AML tools, different kind of transactional monitoring, chain analysis, and now travel rule, right? So plus we have CARP now, speaking about reporting standards. So even like mid-size crypto asset service provider nowadays pays like hundreds of thousands of dollars or francs or euros on an annual basis. What does it mean? That means that at the end of the day, all those costs will come to the end users. This is extremely bad, right? So, and we need to be very cautious with two things. User experience, and we spoke about open protocols, all these kind of integrations, and second, costs. So this is, I think, very, very important. So,
Filip?
Well, I think what WASP needs to carefully plan. That is, I think, the most important thing, to outline all the various scenarios that can happen. And I can repeat one more time, just self-hosted wallets, self-hosted wallets, self-hosted wallets. That's what will get you started, yes.
Thanks. Yeah. It's definitely a one approach, and I think a lot of people are thinking about that for sure.
Yeah, I'm
Laura?
happy to jump in.
Yeah.
You know, I think right now there's a lot of talk around interoperability, and you know, it's something that we've always been open to and are definitely you know, continuing to explore. I just want to like caution that, and this is what we've really reiterated to regulators, is that interoperability is not synonymous with coverage. And so, you know, although interoperability can be a tool that can help achieve coverage, we've also found from our perspective at Trust that over the past several years, it's been of higher value to us to invest in growing the Trust solution, onboarding more members, and building the features that they need and that they're asking for in order for them to meet their needs. So it's definitely something that we want to pursue. Had a lot of great conversations earlier. And you know, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we preserve the very important privacy, security, and kind of core principles that really were how we founded Trust in the first place. And so I think as an industry, yeah, we're kind of at a crossroads of figuring out, as more and more countries do implement travel rule, really how this is going to play out over the next few years. So exciting time, good time to be in compliance, a lot of job security, I suppose, but yeah.
Yeah, I think from a commercial perspective and also as a user, and putting myself in your shoes, I can totally understand, you know, why that would be the logical sort of next step, is to improve the product that you're developing if you have the volume. I think just the risk there that I would caution is that, you know, if we build the one solution that everybody's using, it may be effective, but it does expose everybody to, you know, geopolitical risk. And that's, I think, why we continue to invest our time in alternative solutions to make sure that we're not centralizing, you know, a very decentralized concept or ethos in the hands of, you know, sorry to say, but one American company that is subject to some vulnerabilities politically. So I think that's why we continue, even though that makes complete sense, we continue to spend some energy and burn some calories to develop other solutions. Final word from your side. What's needed to move forward?
Well, I would want to echo what Ilya said about just overall compliance costs, because look, compliance and laws have not emerged in the decentralized era of blockchain, and so we're actually just generally marrying a concept that is off-chain, centralized, asks for the right to audit, trail, and everything, and we're trying to marry it with a concept that is kind of anarchist a little bit, right? You know, it's like, I want to be totally anonymous, completely decentralized. So I think there's going to be a balance, and I think part of it is the price that the industry is paying for increasing adoption is kind of incorporating some of this pre-blockchain principles into the work. The other aspect is cost, of course, right? And I think that's actually where I think and why we're building our product overall as this like end-to-end compliance platform, right? Starting with, you know, KYC, travel rule, transaction monitoring, because actually, as you said, like this is cost. This is actually not bringing you extra revenue or anything, right? And so our view is it would be much more efficient to kind of get it in one place. These things talk to each other and therefore are able to deliver much better value for the money and kind of make things simpler. So I hope as we continue these discussions that vision will continue to be realized. And we've certainly seen this in our customers. And you maybe can get a little bit attest to that, right? You use our KYC services and the travel rule, and that because it is more convenient.
It would be so nice to have non-for-profit organization driving
That's
development of such tools.
Absolutely. Okay, I think our time's up. Do we have time just for maybe one or two questions? One question. One question.
One
Who's the
very
lucky
soul.
person?
Oh,
Max. A question, right? Not a political statement, right? Okay.
Trust sounds like a great plan, but you mentioned it, Chris, that it would be kind of problematic if all the trust is put into one organization. Or am I under this misunderstanding? Is there like a central entity that is doing the verification who can be part
Sure.
of the trusted block, or is it a bigger DAO-like structure, maybe a bit many? And if there is one central entity, can we trust trust? I'm asking that question, pun intended,
sure.
from a Swiss perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked the question because I did want to clarify this. So trust itself is a decentralized solution in the sense that all of the information that's being shared is sent peer-to-peer. So the only centralized component of trust is that we have a bulletin board that helps members actually identify counterparty wallet addresses in a way that's 100% accurate, where they don't have to rely on blockchain analytics or asking their customer. So right now in the industry, that is what most VASPs are left with, of just having to ask their customer or check on Chainalysis, like, who do we think this wallet belongs to? And they're then going and sending their customer data out on that basis. So Coinbase operates the bulletin board to help identify addresses, but the entity trust itself is not like a separate legal entity. So there's just basically a centralized contract that all of the members sign to join this coalition. And although Coinbase has volunteered to operate that only centralized component of the bulletin board, we can pass that ownership of the bulletin board to any member within trust. So this idea that it's all being kind of centralized with one legal entity, although we've kind of volunteered and taken on the role of the operator to date, that can easily be moved to any other VASP in the network. And so I think some of that centralization risk was really what we were trying to avoid. And at the end of the day, the actual transmission of the data is sent peer-to-peer through the open internet. And so that's really why we wanted to make this solution resilient and not subject to like a single point of failure across the industry.
I think trust and TRP are actually very similar in the architecture. The only difference is that the bulletin board, the centralized bulletin board, is replaced with a concept called travel address. And it works like an IBAN, where if you paste that, then it identifies immediately the counterparty VASP and the account of the beneficiary. And so this solution is also solved, but in a decentralized manner.
Two really great solutions for very complicated problems. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. Thank you to our guest speakers.